I think for a lot of people, because they're so used to a traditional dentist, when you say this guy is a natural dentist, they might not know even what that really means. What are you all about? Why would I even want to go to you versus a traditional dentist?
What a traditional dentist might not ask is if you poop every day, which sometimes I ask that. So it's really to see if the detox pathways are open, if the thyroid's functioning correctly. So it's
Yep.
more medical in nature, some of my ideas. But yeah, what does it mean? It means I look at the whole person and I look at what their weaknesses are, and I sometimes say kryptonite or. And anyway, to clarify what I mean is I kind of take apart, reverse engineer, why did that person get into that situation? So as I'm thinking these things, I look and see it's not necessary to test for mercury in your blood or body if you have it right in your mouth that I can see. So it really opens up a big realm that is not just fixing teeth and making sure someone doesn't have gum disease, that kind of thing.
Welcome to the Natural Health Matters podcast, where it's all about maximizing your health potential so that you can look and feel your best at any age. I'm your host, David Sandstrom, naturopathic doctor and biblical health coach, and this is episode number 82. Today we have on the show Dr. Mark DiNola. Dr. Mark has devoted his life to helping people whose oral conditions are affecting their whole health. Dr. Mark has found it very common for people to suffer from chronic neck or shoulder pain, headaches, and insomnia. He's been practicing since 1993 and licensed by the Dental Board of Maryland. Mark is also a member of several dental associations, including the American Dental Association, the Holistic Dental Association, and International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology, or IAOMT. Dr. Mark, welcome to Natural Health Matters.
Hey, thanks for inviting me, David.
Dr. Mark, tell the Natural Nation what it is that you do.
I'm a dentist, and I was trained in Maryland as a common traditional dentist, but in recent years, I've become what we call a holistic or biological dentist. And I think about the whole body, not just the teeth and gums and head and neck, but I think about the whole connection that we are learning about.
Well, you're singing my song. This is Natural Health Matters, and we're all about body, mind, and spirit here. So that's
great.
That's right up our alley for sure. So a lot of times when I'm talking to people, they had a health crisis or a major event in their life that led them on the path that they're in today. So was there an event like that in your life?
I would say the event actually that triggered my interest in biological dentistry was a patient brought some information to me. So it was kind of an interesting way of learning about biological dentistry. Although I would say I probably was being sickened by my work in terms of, which we could get into later, but there's an occupational hazard of working with amalgam fillings, mercury fillings. So I would say I wasn't feeling my best at that time. And so once I learned about this possibility, I just ventured into these academy meetings and learned a lot really quickly. And so it changed. The trajectory of my career changed dramatically in 2009 when I learned about all the possible toxicities and things. But I also...
So you first heard about that at a seminar?
No, I'm sorry. I did hear about it from a magazine called it's DAMS. It stands for Dental Amalgam Syndrome, and it's a non-for-profit out of Minneapolis. And the gentleman, okay. I got on the phone pretty much immediately, learning about what I didn't know and what I was told. So I guess my journey's been about the truth, which is probably something that rings for you as well. The truth about a lot of things that I was taught, and unfortunately, there are influences on dental schools and trade lobby situation where maybe it's not all clear, and it's kind of I would say in a way covered up some of the facts about things. I can go more into detail about that.
Yeah, we'll get into that for sure. But continue with the introduction here. And part of your bio was you're a member of the Holistic Dental Association and International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology. Could you tell us a little bit about what those organizations do and why you consider it valuable to be a member of them?
Yeah, thanks for asking the question again that I didn't answer. Well, the Academy is probably my go-to learning place now. The International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology has physicians and toxicologists and dentists, and they're often twice a year. They're often really current in terms of things that are going on. So I bought an iPad and started learning everything I could, things that I was not aware of. And that Academy meeting, and then the Holistic Dental Association is a little smaller, but it's just a group of people that say maybe they won't use fluoride and maybe they won't do this and do that. And it's kind of, there are several other biological academies that are smaller that I'm a member of too, but it's just learning about everything you can about how our body interacts with the world, and then of course what materials we use and the compatibility or the lack of compatibility of some of these materials, and then of course the general trends in nutrition and current theories on pathophysiology of disease is always there.
Yeah. I think you're a real find because it's very difficult to find a holistic dentist, a natural dentist. You're a very rare individual indeed. So tell us a little bit about what it means to be a natural dentist or a holistic dentist.
Well, before I go there, can I just say this for your audience? So I always refer people to the IOMT, and there's a website or there's a link where you can put in your zip code, and then you can kind of get a general sense of your location, because it's difficult. I have people fly in here to my office, but it's difficult for some of these procedures to be done in one or two appointments. So, but anyway, that would be what I would recommend. The IOMT.
Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes for sure.
Put that in the show notes. Thank you. As far as what does it mean? I'm sorry, I didn't answer the question.
Well, I think for a lot of people, because they're so used to a traditional dentist, when you say this guy is a natural dentist, they might not know even what that really means. What are you all about? Why would I even want to go to you versus a traditional dentist?
Well, I kind of was the middle child, and I kind of use levity a lot. But what a traditional dentist might not ask is if you poop every day, which sometimes I ask that. So it's really to see if the detox pathways are open, if the thyroid's functioning correctly. So it's more medical in nature, some of my ideas. But yeah, what does it mean? It means I look at the whole person and I look at what their weaknesses are, and I sometimes say kryptonite or their weaknesses, and the medications that they're already on would indicate, for example, Synthroid around here and in the nation is like the top 10. So the mercury can affect.
For those that don't know, Synthroid would be a medication for a thyroid med.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah. And anyway, to clarify what I mean is I kind of take apart, reverse engineer, why did that person get into that situation? And I'm not a physician, so I can't really change their meds, but my part is to try to point them in the right direction and hope that they have a naturopathic doctor. But so as I'm thinking these things, I look and see it's not necessary to test for mercury in your blood or body if you have it right in your mouth that I can see. So the wonderful thing about, I'm looking into someone's body, really. And we can see the tongue and see the airway. We can see dry tissues. We can see xerostomia, dry mouth from medications. And you can see if people are grinding, clenching, those types of things. So it really opens up a big realm that is not just, fixing teeth and making sure someone doesn't have gum disease, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic. I love it. So why don't we jump right into mercury amalgam fillings right now? I found a lot of people have them in their mouth, and they really have no idea that could be adversely impacting their health and wellness. So let's talk a little bit about what an amalgam filling is, how they came to be so popular, and why they are not the best idea to have that in your mouth.
Yeah, so you're not unusual to say most people don't know. About half the population does not know. that mercury fillings have 50% mercury. So to say
Yeah.
it really succinctly, they've been allowed and they've been used for 150 years or more when they were, the alternative possibilities. So there was gold and there were mercury fillings, and gold has always been expensive. In fact, right now it's expensive, and it seems to be going up like all commodities. But mercury fillings have 33%, about third of silver, 50% mercury, and then there's other metals like tin and copper. Anyway, it's a small battery in your mouth, and that's been proven. Two dissimilar metals in an aqueous solution is a battery. So there are some
Yes.
charges associated with them. There's a current. The sad thing about it is we've known they were.
Can I
Sure,
interrupt you right there, Dr.
sure.
Manola? So somebody might be asking, well, what's wrong with the current in the mouth? Well, the body has very, very subtle electrical signals that run through our meridians, our energy meridians throughout the body, and they all run through the mouth. And when you have an electrical signal inside the mouth that's not supposed to be there, it's disruptive to our body's very, very subtle electrical flow. So we have electricity in our bodies that flows through our nervous system, and it's how our heart beats, and it's how our eyes see, and it's how our organs operate. But the amperage and the voltage is very, very subtle. So when we introduce a foreign electrical signal inside the body, as you said, when you open up your mouth, you're looking inside the body. That is detrimental. That is not part of God's design. And it's my contention that we maximize our health potential when we align our lives more fully with God's natural design for spirit, mind, and body. In this case, having an electrical battery inside your mouth is not part of our natural
Yeah,
design,
that's a
is
nice
it?
way to look at it. I agree 100%. Yeah, and in fact, the current is so high that it's, might be 100 times higher than, well, maybe 1,000 times higher than your brain. And it's right
Wow.
close to your brain. So, yeah, I mean, that's
Yeah.
actually the reason why I don't believe in, to just jump onto the root canal situation. That blocks the meridians as well. So, a vital structure not being vital anymore is problematic in all of medicine. In fact,
Yeah.
2,000 amputations a day occur in the United States when there's a diabetic toe or foot or whatever, and they can't get the blood flow back. So I look at these things as like you're saying, our bodies are wonderfully made, and there's resistance
Hmm.
to bacteria when the things are working correctly. When you have the right nutrition, there's fluid coming out of a tooth. It's kind of being pulsing out of the tooth. Motorcycle. Uh, so it is a natural system that's designed for health, actually resist decay and plaque, and but with these charged items in there, it actually tends to attract plaque, these metal fillings, and
Hmm.
even traditional dentists will say there's more periodontal problems around mercury fillings, and they won't really recognize that it's causing local dysfunction. But the current is an interesting. It's something that they taught in dental schools in the 40s. They called it galvanism, and galvanism is really not taught anymore. I'd venture to say it's not even discussed too much, because we're using a whole array of metals with the implants, and dental implants have nickel and titanium, and then you have a chrome crown and a chrome partial, and you have all this other stuff going on. So
Yeah.
and you're the way you first asked me this question, it is not on anybody's radar. In fact, I feel like we'll talk some more about this, but children can receive a mercury filling and their parents are not even aware of it, and that to
Yeah.
me that could be considered assault today. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. So so we know mercury is toxic. We know it creates an electrical signal or energy inside of the mouth and inside the body. So let's say somebody's listening and they say, "Well, I want to get these things out." I would suggest that you don't want to go to a traditional regular dentist to get that done. So could you talk to that a little bit?
yeah, I mean, part of the academy is to teach, and we've been trying to teach everybody, any dentist, how to do this safely, and that's the key. The key is safe removal, where vapor particles are all taken into consideration and strictly confined and controlled. So I like to use analogy of asbestos because everybody knows about that. Or lead paint. You don't sand your lead paint on your porch. You don't sand it. You don't do it in your house. That'll aerosolize. But mercury, when you cut it, you heat it, there's actual vapor. And the vapor is looking for electrons, and it's a very dangerous form of mercury. So the safe conditions that we use, I mean, I have several $1,000s worth of equipment to control the air that's breathed in the room by my staff and myself, my patient. We're giving external oxygen to the patient. We're covering and draping the patient. And it's on my website, which is MD Dental Wellness Center, but it's on the IAOMT's website. But it is, most dentists that are holistic should have some verbiage about the fact that they do a safe removal process. If it's not being done safely, people can get sick because often, you probably know this, but often someone's bucket is almost all full. They may have had another exposure of mold or something, or Lyme, and then they get unsafe removal. It can really do a number on the mitochondria and their energy and thyroid and whatever.
What Dr. Mark is talking about right here, Natural Nation, is total body load. So generally speaking, if someone's at a practitioner and they're saying, hey, doc, I don't feel well, it's because their total body load, all the burdens that their body is carrying from toxic buildup, for instance, mercury fillings, or maybe it's air pollution, maybe they live in a big city and they have unclean air all day long, maybe they never get outdoors. There's a lot of things that build up to cause our bodies to basically carry around a ball and chain that weight us down and prevent our bodies or inhibit our bodies from doing what they already know how to do, which is thrive. So when you have somebody who's not feeling well, their total body load is high. And when you do something like get mercury fillings removed improperly, that could push that person over the edge to having something really, really serious and difficult to get over.
Yeah, that often in chiropractics, you'll see a neck problem all is the trigger. So like a whiplash injury might be the trigger, or mold might be the trigger. So yeah, I mean, it's good to talk about it. So you talk about it as body load, total body load. Mm-hmm. So our terrain is what God intended our terrain to be, have such and such amount of all these elements, and it's the introduction of these bad things in our soil that cause the problem. That's the kind of way I look at it. Like you said, 35,000 feet.
Yeah, very good. So if somebody did want to get their amalgam or mercury fillings out, they would go to the IAOMT website.
Yeah, I would say find a doctor, and then you put your zip code. It goes by states. And I can tell you there's a lot of difference between a lot of dentists. So you have to be careful, and look for that they're really watching mitigations and safety. And I mean, I do full mouth amalgams removal with sedations, and I also do half the mouth overnight, like if they stay in town. So a lot of dentists will be possible to remove most mercury in a few times, but again, it has to be by a trained person.
Yes, with the equipment, right equipment, and made the investment in the equipment in the office. Yeah, right. So a traditionally trained dentist has not been trained in this. They just don't know, and the problem is they don't know how much they don't know.
Yeah.
Right. When JFK Jr. was killed in his light airplane, I met him. He was on our flight about a week before he died, and he walked up and he said, "Hi, I'm JFK Jr." I said, "Yeah, I know." He says, "Yeah, I just got my private pilot's license, and I really enjoy airplanes." And we showed him the cockpit. We talked for a few minutes. He was a great guy, but he took his light airplane up and flew into a dark space, which was instrument conditions, and he was only rated for visual flight. And even though the airplane he owned that he was flying that night had a very sophisticated autopilot that could have easily taken care of him, he didn't know how to use it. And he got that airplane into a deep spiral, and they spiraled all the way into the water. So he didn't know how much he didn't know. And the same would apply to a traditionally trained dentist. If he hasn't taken the initiative on his own to get an education about the hazards of mercury filling removal, you could be doing a lot more harm than good if you go to a guy like or a gal like that.
Yeah, one of your other philosophies that I picked up was mindset and being fixed mindset versus open mindset. And the problem is we're trained to learn this thing and think it's just that's the way it is. And then unfortunately, it's kind of a sad thing, but because dentists start to get mercury toxic themselves, it's more difficult to learn new things. It sounds like I'm simplifying it, but it's true. But I have a lot of dentists that learn like the greatest and best dentistry, and they learn about Botox and they learn about this and that. But what they think is sort of in the bag was the things that they learned in dental school, and those things have evolved. I mean, materials are changing so quickly. I think we're behind in less than 2 years if you're not really keeping up, with these things. So the mindset, like being open-minded about, well, that's a possibility. Of course, I was angry when I first learned about mercury, but as you kind of come to find out, if you love your job, you're going to learn how to do it safely. And I'm sure while you were flying, there were new protocols and new safety things that were put in place. So
well, lots of them. We don't have enough time to go into all that, but lots. And flying has gotten a lot safer as a result of that. I would love to share a bunch of them, but we don't really have time. So after someone gets their fillings removed, their mercury fillings removed, do you do a detox with them? Do you put them on a metal detox?
Yeah, well, what I try to do is work with practitioners like yourself, and whether they're naturopaths, physicians are pretty good if we talk about, nutrition and getting to make sure they're going to the bathroom, because the bowels are like the key. The major problem is toxifying yourself, because mercury goes out through the gallbladder and dumps into the large intestine. When it does that, or into the intestine, when it does that, it can retoxify you. So, excuse me.
Yeah.
I think what you need to think about is some scavengers and some things to capture, like activated charcoal. And so we do talk to patients about that. I mean, there are zeolite. There's so many things that they talk about, but natural food, pectin, and some natural chelators are really nice, organic cilantro. And we talk about different foods, but the main thing is lots of fluid and making sure you're going to the bathroom every day. And then again, the experience of there's something that happens, but when mercury is removed from the mouth, there is a commensurate like change in the body because that stress is off. So then it starts to release. So you have to be careful. Some people use the Cutler protocol, which is tricky, but it's alpha lipoic acid, and you're trying to grab that electron every time. There are so many different. I think you need to be guided through the detox. Like you probably help people a lot with that. I try to get them on the right supplements. I have amino acids and organ supplements, and I even recommend a vegetarian diet because they get off of the junk. I mean, getting the junk makes you sluggish, and it slows up your fatty liver and those types of things. So I think vegetarian diet's okay maybe for detox purposes, but I mean we could argue.
That's a perfect
that.
lead in.
Yeah.
So if you already have the fillings and you already have them in your mouth, then you've got to deal with it. But better to not get the cavity in the first place, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about how nutrition impacts oral health and how that can keep our teeth healthy and strong beyond just avoiding sugar. I think everyone, most people know that sugar, a lot of sugar consumption is bad for oral health. But let's go a little deeper than that.
Yeah, what I would say is the choice of foods, it doesn't matter if it's sugar, but the processed food in general comes with a very empty sort of nutritional complement. So if say United States, we're eating like a bunch of seed oils and sugar, and 60% of our calories are coming from like this processed food blend, we're not getting the things we need. So my contention is, like, my thought pattern is getting the real foods back in, and talk about grandma, or great grandma's recipes and whole foods and cooking from scratch, getting rid of, really, I mean, the processed food is unbelievable. It's about 80% of what people eat. And so it's very sad, but it's another thing that they're not really bringing up in this whole with the COVID mess, but they're not talking about diet as much as they should. And D3 is something you can get through fermented cod liver oil and fermented soybean, and that has K2 in it, which K2 helps facilitate the rendering of calcium in a way that's more healthy, getting it out of the soft tissues and putting it into hard tissues is the way I say it. So vitamin K2 activates a couple proteins, but osteocalcins 1 pulls calcium into odontoblasts or bone or teeth cells, and then it gets it out of soft tissue. So it's an important vitamin that people are missing. And so what I was saying is, like, the fact that you're eating a poor diet, you're actually lacking that even more. So it's an egg, yellow fat. It's in like grass-fed beef, eggs, and your audience probably knows about K2, but that's another thing people don't know about, honestly, as far as their nutrition.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
So your question about plaque, if you have the bad diet, your plaque is going to be different than if you have a good diet. So the good diet, so plaque is good until it's not good, and if you feed the bugs with bad things, they're going to grow. And so it's the combination of nutrition from systemically in the cells, like the K2, but it's the topical reaction of the microbes in the mouth. There's 700 species of bacteria in the mouth. So if you feed them, let's say, high fructose corn syrup, they're going to grow in different ways, and that's where we start to get what we call karyogenicity or cavity promoting bacteria. And Dr. Weston Price and some others have shown that if you have the right foods, actually the plaque changes to the point where those bugs are crowded out and they don't exist in the numbers, if that makes any sense.
So if I'm hearing you right, it's not so much that we're not brushing well, or it's not so much that we're not chewing gum or drinking high sugary soda or things like that. It's also a matter of getting good, solid nutrition on a regular basis, right? So our bodies have to take the food that we eat and turn it into us. And when it comes to strong teeth and bones, because teeth are basically bones that we can see, right? So we need to get certain nutrients to help our bodies build strong teeth and bones. So K2, you said, and
so
magnesium,
boron, calcium, silicon. I mean, there's a lot of collagen makes up 40% of your bone. I also do a lot of surgery. So when we talk about building back the bone, I've been saying build back bone better, just because it sounds fun. But
that's current.
It's current. But when we build back bone, we want all the building blocks to be there. And collagen makes up 40% of the bone, and it's also in teeth. So it's a simple protein. It's actually I guess it's the most ubiquitous protein in our body is collagen. So vitamin C supports that. And again, it's like the anti-nutrients, the lack of nutrients that transform the plaque or make you a more susceptible individual. I mean, there are studies where people have no hygiene, but they don't have the bad food and they don't get cavities.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. That's amazing. It kind of goes contrary to what we've been told for many years. So you build health from the inside out. When you strengthen your internal terrain, your body's able to fight off the bad guys, the undesirable microscopic organisms, and you don't have as much trouble.
Yeah.
So let's.
Yeah, that's actually a follow-up idea, which is it's your prebiotics. It's the beginning of your gut, and so we've been told to just like make a desert every night. Listerine and just strip it. Well, we don't even know there's some nuanced thing when you swallow bacteria. Maybe when you, I like to like rinse my mouth and swallow whatever's in my mouth in the morning. I mean, it could be nothing. It could be probably, anyway. There's genetic material, as shared between in these biofilms in our mouth and gut. So, who knows? But I think you're right about. It's sort of a paradigm shift in terms of what we should be talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about another item that people are very much unaware of, and that is root canals. So now you're the expert here, but a root canal is when you have so much disease in your tooth that the tooth has lost its vitality. It's a dead organ or dead body part. And they're doing their best to save the tooth, so they fill it. Talk about the hazards associated with root canals, if you would, Dr.
Well,
Mark.
let me just set the scene a little bit more. So if you do all the right things and don't get decay, you won't need a root canal. Okay. If you
Right.
don't cut a tooth several times to do restoration, and then you need a crown, you won't need a root canal. Also, trauma from bruxing, grinding your teeth, and clenching. Also, just trauma in general will devitalize a tooth. Now, when a tooth is devitalized, that means it doesn't have its blood flow, doesn't have its lymphatic system going, and its innervation. So again, what is a tooth? Is a structure. Some chiropractors and people I know think that each tooth will represent, it'll know what kind of food we're eating and kind of sense things and get things ready down below in terms of organ, manufacturing, like enzymes and things like that. So once that form has been altered, I think the function changes. Maybe it can't do its job. There's really no dead, I would say, item like a toe or anything, and I think I talked about this at the beginning, but there's nothing that doesn't have every cell has a capillary blood vessel coming to it. It's hard to believe that we have 100. Once it loses that information is gone, and when that information is gone, there's also some problems with the flow of fluid, like I told you, so that the pressure is not inside the tooth anymore, and it's not flowing like a nice fountain, and it's not resisting plaque. So it is therefore the opposite. It's bringing in things, and it's more of a, I believe it's more of a sink, a swamp, sort of a niche for bacteria. Actually, it's noted that it's from the gut that we see these different bugs. So there's about 150, but we test for about 100 different anaerobic bacteria through DNA analysis today, and every 100% of them come back with different bacteria. These anaerobic bacteria have their own like problems associated with producing like chemicals like mercaptan and sulfur dioxide, and these sulfur kind of compounds can create clotting problems. The bacteria themselves are released in our bloodstream upon mastication or chewing on your teeth that have root canals. Those teeth cannot sense the pressure on them anymore, so therefore sometimes they fracture. But there's an intimate relationship with the blood flow around teeth. So you get bacteremias when you brush your teeth, floss. When you get a cleaning, there's bacteremia. Bacteria go up in the blood. So people with root canals will have we can test, you can test for bacteria in the blood. So anyway, the problem is, again, you mentioned about blocking a meridian. So we feel that in the holistic community that's the number one way to block a meridian is having a tooth. Now you have a tooth with a mercury filling in it, and you can picture the scenario there.
Yeah. So in other words, the train is running down the tracks, but the bridge is out.
So I basically don't do them anymore personally. I refer if somebody wants to save their tooth. I don't recommend them. And then Dr. Thomas Levy is a cardiologist who I usually quote, and there are others, but he's a prominent educator in the realm of like vitamin C, and he wrote Death by Calcium, talking about K2. But he wrote a book about hidden epidemic, and it's all about dental infections. And he is also an attorney, if I said that or not. So he's written this down and backed it up, and he thinks root canals are causal for some disease. He's a cardiologist, so he thinks it's causal for heart disease. So if someone has heart condition and they have root canals, I am recommending a 3D scan, see what the bone looks like, see if there's breakdown, see if the tooth's fractured, see if it looks like it's not really working anymore. Then we talk about it from there.
Yeah, there is evidence, plenty of it, in the published medical literature that poor oral health is associated with cardiovascular disease. I could put some links in the show notes to some of those articles.
it's not much of a leap from periodontitis, which is periodontal disease, where the bone is being affected, to what a root canal is, which is periapical periodontitis. So it's the same sort of array of chemicals like interleukin 6 and tumor necrosis factor and some of these things that we know amp up C-reactive protein in the liver. So tell me how that gets to the liver. It's all the chemistry of these cytokines. So anyway, I can talk very high level. I'm trying to bring it down, but I know you're right about that. I mean, it's a known entity.
So if someone is a candidate for a root canal, you don't do them anymore. Obviously, removing the tooth would be an option, correct? And would you consider that to be a healthier option?
Yeah, I think short term and planning. So if there's anterior teeth that are needing a root canal, maybe short term is not a problem. Getting people out of pain is not a problem, but long term, I think there's a problem. So I begin root canals and I get people out of pain, but long term, for example, like if you're diabetic, you're twice as likely to have a root canal fail early on. So, just things like that. It's like we have to be more selecting, like looking at the person and saying what could they handle. I mean, maybe they can't handle that. Maybe they could. But yeah, I don't recommend them anymore.
Yeah. So if someone opted to get the tooth removed, what are your thoughts on getting a dental implant?
Well, at this time, I would say I'm only using ceramic implants, and I might be rare in that regard, but there are now 4 or 5 implants that are ceramic, or they're zirconia oxide, which you could look up and it'll say that it's ceramic, but it's a different structure than the titanium implants. So I don't really recommend titanium anymore unless it's a quality of life thing where there's no way to do anything except for maybe an overdenture and they have a lot of atrophy and their bone is gone and there's only one way to do it. Yeah, but I think an implant reloads the meridian is in fact, and it probably is better than not having a tooth there. We can do bridges and we can do other things to bring teeth back into the mouth,
Yeah. So when a tooth is removed over time, the jaw says, well, I don't have any use for this bone that was holding that tooth. So we have bone loss over a period of time. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, the again, form and function, a tooth sits in a ligament and the ligament stimulates. It's kind of like why you tell people to go walk. And that's how we activate our skeleton. And that's how we make bone grow. And so a tooth is stimulated. A tooth stimulated because it's like it has fibers, all kinds of different fibers on its attached to it. So it stimulates the bone as you chew and function.
Mm-hmm. It's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Mark, that a lot of times when a root canal is done, there is still some remaining bacteria in there, and if it's not flushed out well, that you can embed that infection underneath the root canal. Is that a problem? Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, again, looking at the form of something, how it was designed. If we look at how it was designed, the blood vessels are in the center. There's cells with appendages or cell bodies going out to the end of the root, out to the ligament. When a tooth is devitalized, those cells die, and you only have the housing of and there are these tubules. So there's thousands of tubules on a tooth. And those are susceptible to migration of bacteria. So it's true, you cannot clean it completely. A root canal specialist might tell you that. A dentist might tell you that, but they hedge and say the body can deal with it and there'll be some healing. But unfortunately, that's not the way it really is. And most of these things are asymptomatic, by the way. So most dental disease does not hurt. You can have a cavity for a long time. It doesn't hurt. You can have gum disease. It doesn't hurt. But you have to look for signs and symptoms. And that's why being able to look inside your body really is nice. Being able to visualize.
Yeah, excellent. That's really good. So to wrap things up, can you leave the Natural Nation, the audience, with some low-hanging fruit? What are some steps they can take to get a quick win and start improving their oral health that would ultimately improve their health and wellness altogether?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of talked about not eating the processed food. If you can't pronounce the food labeling, read labels. If it says carrot, that's a carrot. That's good. Eat that. If it's that's the main thing. I mean, that's the reason why people are sick today, is they're eating the wrong things. The other thing is, I agree with you with the mind, spirit. I mean, you have to have, hopefully you have a higher power of some sort, and you're spiritual in terms of, fellow man and trying to be altruistic, and your happiness will be dependent on that, actually doing things for other people and being kind. So, and then the other one would be moving, and so the low-hanging fruit is like the stuff you started off talking about, which is mind, body, spirit. If something like, would God be happy if you smoked a cigarette? Maybe not. I don't know. He may have invented tobacco, but the point is, it was probably for an insecticide, not for smoking.
Yeah, natural bug killer or something like that.
But anyway, I guess I like to keep things light. When in my office, I can be serious, but I also keep things light and have rock and roll on, and nice music and things. But the
very good.
The bottom line is what you do every day, and then also how often you eat is a key thing that people are missing. Giving our GI a little break, getting it to parasympathetics helps for detoxification, and I think we're always feeding that tube, and we need to back off. I think you probably recommend intermittent fasting or time delayed eating.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So those are the fun things I talk about with patients. I mean, I don't charge to talk about it. I like to talk about those things and with people.
That's really cool. Yeah, your passion comes through. I can see that. I'm sure you have a lot of loyal patients.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I wanted to be a dentist since I was 8 years old, and then when I found out about mercury, I was really upset. And then I turned it around. Yeah.
Well, thank you for doing what you're doing. You're doing great work, and boy, there's a lot of people that need what you do, for sure. So if someone wanted to come see you, Dr. Mark, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I have a website, mddentalwellness.com, and of course, if you look up holistic dentist in your area, that would be a way to, or biological dentist would be a way to find somebody. But I'm in, my practice is in LaVale, Maryland, which is Western Maryland, like 2 hours from Pittsburgh, 2 hours from DC, Baltimore, and about, we're due east of Morgantown, about 70 miles from Morgantown, kind of sitting in the middle.
I'm guessing you have clients come from a long distance to come see you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to be humble about that fact, but I mean, it's the people told me when I become a biological dentist, people will drive to see you, and I didn't think that was. I thought, okay, yeah, maybe, but I have a map. A pegboard that my staff got me with pegs from different places that people have come from. So, it is amazing. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. I mean, we have hotels around and bed and breakfasts and that kind of thing.
What's the farthest somebody's driven to come see you?
Oh, I had someone from the West Coast. We've had several people from the West Coast, but yeah, wow. It's just. I just try to be, I try to refer if it's inconvenient, but I can't do it everything for everybody. And I trained under Dr. Volz. Dr. Volz is a dentist in Switzerland, and he says he can't do it. He just wants to teach people how to do it. So we're trying to train biological dentists. I mean, this is the way it should be done anyway.
Excellent. All right, Dr. Mark, I really enjoyed this conversation. I think people are going to get a lot out of it. I really appreciate you sharing your time and your wisdom.
Thank you.
For more, go to the show notes page at davidsandstrom.com/82. There you can find links to all the resources that we mentioned, as well as a free downloadable transcript. And I always include some type of a content upgrade to help you go deeper with that episode. That's it for now. Thank you for listening, and I'll talk with you next week. Be blessed.